Hello, everybody, and welcome to Film Format, a new podcast where I will be talking about filmmaking, photography, creative process, gear, editing, news, and much, much more. I want this to be a weekly podcast where anybody that is creatively driven, be it in the filmmaking industry, photography industry, or maybe just a creative at home, to just kind of come and broaden their horizons. So grab a cup of tea, a coffee, and maybe even a cold brew, because after all, it is 5 o'clock somewhere. Now, since this is my first episode, I want to introduce the format for this podcast and give some general background on myself. But first things first, I want everything in this podcast to be created by an independent artist. So the music you heard in the beginning was created by my soul brother and dear friend, October 7, previously known as Ajofe Street Mic. And the animation, all the graphics you're seeing on the screen are created by me. And the photo you're seeing was actually created by my buddy in town, Thesera Pinto. So I want to keep this all on a creative local level. Each episode is going to start with a high and a low that I had from this past week. And I want everybody to send me their highs and lows, and I will not only read them all, but I'll even feature some of them in the next episode. So my high for this past week had to be my mom and sister-in-law sending us pandemic care packages filled with toilet paper and snacks. What an amazing idea during these stressful and bizarre times. Especially bizarre when you can't find toilet paper on the shelf for 3 weeks and you live above a grocery store. Huge shout out to them. I think everybody should take some time this week to spread some love to friends or family. You don't need to send like an elaborate package, but just remind people that they're loved and cared about when, they might be stuck in isolation and, just put a smile on their face. My low had to be my dog Luna breaking another wireless headset. That brings the total of headsets that were killed by Luna to 3. So I really should have a memorial or a graveyard for these things by now. Don't forget to send me in your highs and lows, and I'll feature some of them in this section in next week's podcast. Creating a podcast is something that's been on my mind for about 6 months now, and it's funny because I used to think that podcasts were really weird and for people that had these 2-hour-long commutes to work and stuff, but I found myself in the past year listening to them more and more and more, and it just seems like one of those things that once you've kind of dipped your toe, you're just like jumping in and kind of tasting all the Kool-Aid. Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe my attention span's getting longer. I'm not really sure. But I do know that I want each episode to be roughly 30 minutes long. Since this is an intro episode, it's going to be a little bit shorter just because the main bulk of this episode will be me giving some background on myself. I don't really want to talk about myself for 30 minutes, and I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk about myself for 30 minutes. So here we go. I'm a filmmaker and photographer currently based out of Portland, Oregon, and I've been working in the industry for about 6 years now. 3 of those years were spent interning and working as a creative director at a production company in Iowa called Pixel Labs, where we created a lot of online advertisements, educational videos, event live streams, and much more. Fast forward a couple years, and my partner Libby and I decided to move to Portland, where she could further her career in nonprofit consulting and I could go full-time freelance in filmmaking. Since then, the most notable project I've worked on was a feature-length documentary called Grid Shock, a film about sex trafficking in Iowa. It was a film that Vanessa McNeil and I crowdfunded in 60 days, and we raised about $55,000 for it. We shot it 30 days straight, and there are so many stories from this project alone, but I'll save those details for another time. A year after filming, we premiered Grid Shock at the Des Moines Civic Center to over 1,800 people. And since the premiere in April of 2019, the film has been screened across the country to thousands and thousands of more people. Grid Shock has taken up about 3 years as a project in total, but it's not the only thing I was working on in that time. I spent most of my time outside of Grid Shock working on other narratives, be it fictional, documentary, commercials, weddings, and just honing in on my style and storytelling. I've finally come to a point in 2020 where I'm really proud of my style and my ability to tell a captivating story. I won't go too deep into the episode about other projects or experiences, but I hope that gives some background as to why I'm creating this podcast and just some good details about myself. If you want to take a look at some of my work, I just posted my new reel, and you can find it by searching Taylor Bluemel Filmmaking Reel or by going to my website, taylorbluemel.com. That is going to wrap it up for this podcast episode. But before I let you go, I want to end each episode with 1 minute of natural sound from a recording that I've captured. This week's natural sound will be from actually one of my YouTube videos where I went to Pacific City and captured some landscape photography images. So in the recording, you can expect to hear some clickety-clacks from my medium format Pentax 6x7, as well as the beautiful crashing waves of the ocean and some people playing in the distance. Next week, you can expect to learn about how this pandemic is affecting the filmmaking industry on an independent level, as well as a big budget level like Hollywood, and I hope to see you all here next week. Don't forget to send me your highs and lows so that I can feature some in next week's podcast. Peace.